It's just that my house is no place for losers right now. Those were the exact words my son Derek used when I stood in his expensive modern kitchen on December 20th. I had stopped by to drop off some early gifts for my two grandsons, assuming we would nail down the time I should arrive for Christmas dinner. Instead, Derek stood blocking the hallway, crossing his arms. Behind him, his wife Sarah was aggressively polishing a wine glass. She didn't even look up. Sarah's parents are flying in from Boston. Derek continued shifting his weight. They're executives, Mom. They want a sophisticated evening. No offense, but you don't exactly fit the vibe. You always talk about your gardening and coupons. It's embarrassing. I stared at him. I am 65 years old, a widow who raised him single-handedly after his father passed. I wore clean, tailored clothes, kept a neat home, and never once embarrassed him. But to Sarah's wealthy parents, I was just the ordinary middle-class mother-in-law. A loser. For a brief, agonizing second, I expected him to take it back. I expected a laugh, a joke, an apology. Nothing came. Sarah just kept polishing that glass, a faint smirk playing on her lips. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't demand respect or list out the sacrifices I'd made. I simply looked at my son, noting the designer sweater he wore, the one bought with the credit card I paid off for him last month. "You're right," I replied quietly. Derek blinked, clearly surprised. "I am. Yes, you absolutely are." I turned toward the door, leaving the wrapped presents on the entryway table. I walked out to my car, the cold winter air hitting my face. I wasn't heartbroken. I was wide awake. If I was a loser, it was time to stop funding the winners. My house was quiet when I walked in. Usually this silence felt heavy, a reminder of my husband's absence. Tonight, it felt like a blank canvas. I made a cup of black tea, set it on my kitchen island, and opened my laptop. For 3 years, ever since Derek and Sarah bought a house they couldn't actually afford, I had been the silent safety net. I called it being a supportive mother. Looking back, it was just a subscription fee to remain in my son's life. I logged into my banking portal. The dashboard loaded, displaying the web of automatic transfers I had set up to keep their lifestyle afloat. There was the $600 monthly transfer labeled Grandkids Activities Money Sarah used for elite travel hockey and private piano lessons. I clicked the small trash can icon next to it. Delete, payee, confirm. Next was the joint emergency credit card. I had opened it in my name, giving Derek a card for real emergencies. Last month's emergency had been a ski weekend in Aspen. I navigated to the card controls. Report, lost/stolen, no. Close, account, yes. Then came the auto pay for their cell phone family plan, the streaming services, and the monthly grocery delivery subscription Sarah insisted was essential for her mental health. Cancel, delete, terminate. It took exactly 12 minutes to erase 3 years of financial bleeding. I didn't feel a shred of guilt. I felt a strange, thrilling lightness in my chest. For years, I had bent over backward, terrified of losing access to my grandchildren, terrified of being pushed away. But they had just pushed me away anyway. They had taken my money and shut the door in my face. I closed my laptop and took a sip of my tea. The first domino had been pushed. Tomorrow was Friday, the day Sarah usually did her massive holiday grocery shopping using my backup card. I wondered how long it would take for the phone to ring. The text message arrived at 2:14 p.m. the next day. "Hey, the blue card is declining at Whole Foods. The cashier is waiting. Call the bank and fix it." I read Sarah's message while standing in my bedroom, folding a stack of cashmere sweaters into a small suitcase. I didn't reply. I just tossed my phone onto the bed and went back to packing. 10 minutes later, my phone started vibrating violently. It was Derek. I let it ring out. He called again. Then came a flurry of texts. "Mom, answer your phone." Sarah is humiliated. She had to put half the groceries back. "What is wrong with your account?" I zipped my suitcase, finally picking up the phone. I didn't type out an angry paragraph. I simply wrote back, "The account is fine." I closed the card. "Merry Christmas." I slipped the phone into my purse and carried my bag out to the hallway. After Derek's cruel comment, I had realized I had absolutely no obligations for the holidays. No turkey to roast, no pies to bake, no forced smiles to wear, while Sarah's parents bragged about their stock portfolios. So I had booked a 4-day stay at a beautiful, secluded lodge in the mountains 3 hours away. It was expensive, but without Derek's bills draining my account, I could easily afford it. As I locked my front door, my phone rang again. Derek. This time, I answered. "What do you mean you closed the card?" he demanded, his voice echoing loudly. "Mom, we need that for the holiday dinner. Sarah's parents are expecting prime rib. Then Sarah's parents, or you can buy a prime rib." I answered calmly, sliding into my car. "You can't do this right before Christmas," he shouted. "You uninvited me right before Christmas, Derek. You said your house was no place for losers. So I removed the loser's money from your wallet." Before he could stammer out an excuse, I ended the call. The drive to the mountains was breathtaking. The roads were dusted with fresh snow, and the pine trees looked like they belonged on a postcard. By the time I checked into the lodge, my phone showed 14 missed calls from Derek and 3 from Sarah. I turned the device off entirely and left it in my glove compartment. My room had a massive stone fireplace and a balcony overlooking a frozen lake. For the first time in decades, I didn't spend Christmas Eve stressed in a hot kitchen. I ordered room service, a medium-rare steak, and a glass of expensive Merlot, and sat by the fire reading a novel. I thought about my grandsons. I missed them, of course, but I also knew Sarah weaponized them. If you don't pay for this camp, they'll fall behind. If you don't buy this brand, they'll be bullied. I had let my love for those boys be turned into a bargaining chip. Not anymore. On Christmas morning, I woke up late. I drank coffee on the balcony, watching the snow fall. I went for a walk on the trails, breathing in the crisp, clean air. I felt completely detached from the chaos I knew was happening back in the city. Derek and Sarah had likely scrambled. Without my credit card, they would have had to use their own maxed-out cards to host her parents. Without the monthly cash transfer, their January mortgage payment was already looming like a dark cloud. They had assumed I was weak. They mistook my silence and my generosity for a lack of a spine. Because I never argued, they thought I couldn't fight back. But I didn't need to fight. I just needed to stop carrying them. As the sun set on Christmas Day, I felt a deep, profound peace. I was reclaiming my life one boundary at a time. And I knew the real storm was waiting for me when I got back. I turned my phone back on the day after Christmas. The screen instantly lit up with a barrage of notifications. Voicemails, texts, and alerts from my home security app. I ignored the messages and opened the camera app. My front porch came into view on the small screen showing a recording from Christmas afternoon. Derek and Sarah were standing at my front door. Sarah looked furious, her arms crossed tight against the cold, while Derek fumbled with his keychain. He shoved his key into my deadbolt and turned it. Or rather, he tried to turn it. I watched his face twist in confusion. He jiggled the handle, pulled the key out, checked it, and shoved it back in. Nothing happened. "It's not working." He muttered, his voice picked up clearly by the camera's microphone. "What do you mean it's not working?" Sarah snapped. "Just open it. We need the folding chairs and the extra wine from her cellar. My parents are complaining about the seating." "The key won't turn," Derek shouted back, slamming his hand against the wood. I smiled, sipping my lodge coffee. 2 days before I left, I had called a local locksmith. For $150, every lock on my house had been rekeyed. Derek had possessed a key for years, treating my home like his personal storage unit and free grocery store. He would frequently pop over when I wasn't home to take tools, bottles of wine, or raid the deep freezer. In the video, Derek looked directly up at the camera lens. "Mom, if you're watching this, open the door. This isn't funny. You ruined Christmas dinner and now you're locking us out." Sarah grabbed his arm, pulling him away. "Forget it. She's gone crazy. We'll just buy more wine on credit." They stormed off my porch. I saved the video to my phone. It wasn't about being petty. It was about solidifying the perimeter. My house, my rules, my money. I drove back into the city on December 28th. The holiday lights in my neighborhood looked a little less magical, a little more tired, but my house stood solid and quiet, welcoming me back. I unpacked my suitcase, ran a load of laundry, and checked my mail. Everything was perfectly normal. I was just pouring a glass of water when I heard the heavy, aggressive thumping on my front door. I didn't rush. I set my glass down, smoothed my sweater, and walked to the entryway. I opened the door without undoing the chain lock, leaving a 3-inch gap. Derek stood there, his face red from the cold, his breath pluming in the air. Sarah was right behind him, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. "Open the door," Mom Derek demanded, pushing his palm against the wood. "I can hear you perfectly well from right here," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Why did you change the locks?" Sarah interrupted, pushing past Derek's shoulder to glare at me. "Do you know how embarrassing it was to stand out here freezing on Christmas Day? It's my house, Sarah. I change the locks when I feel my security is compromised." "Compromised?" Derek scoffed. "It's me, your son. A son who uninvited me to Christmas because I was a loser who would ruin the vibe for your in-laws," I corrected him. "A son who only came over here to steal wine from my cellar to impress people who looked down on me." Derek dropped his hand from the door, his face shifting from anger to a manufactured kind of hurt. "Mom, come on." I was stressed. Sarah's parents put a lot of pressure on us. "You know I didn't mean it like that. Now please open the door. We need to talk about the accounts." "There is nothing to talk about," I answered. "Yes, there is," Sarah shrilled, completely dropping her polished facade. The boys' hockey fees bounced. The gym membership bounced. "We got a notice from the cell phone company this morning. You can't just cut us off without warning. You are two able-bodied adults in your late 30s. I stated, my tone unwavering. "You live in a 4-bedroom house and drive a luxury SUV. I am not cutting you off. I am simply stepping out of the way so you can manage your own responsibilities." Derek looked genuinely panicked. "Mom, I don't have the cash for the January mortgage. You always transfer the difference. If you don't do it, we're going to overdraw. Then you should return the SUV. Or Sarah can get a job." Sarah gasped as if I had thrown cold water in her face. "I am a stay-at-home mother. My job is raising your grandchildren. Both boys are in school full-time from 8 to 3, I pointed out. You have plenty of time to work." "This is ridiculous." Derek ran a hand through his hair. "You're doing this to punish us for one stupid comment. You're holding the kids hostage over your bruised ego." I'd reached onto the entryway table and picked up a small black notebook I had prepared before my trip. I undid the chain lock, opened the door fully, and handed the notebook to Derek. He took it tentatively. "What is this?" "It's a ledger," I explained. "It details every dollar I have spent on your mortgage, your vacations, your groceries, and your bills over the last 3 years. The total is just over $42,000. Derek stared at the number written in red ink on the first page. "You bought my silence and my compliance with my own money," I continued. "But the transaction is over. I am not a bank, and I am certainly no loser." Good night, Derek. I stepped back and firmly closed the door in their faces. I turned the brand new deadbolt with a satisfying heavy click. Outside, I heard Derek shout something muffled. I heard Sarah's high-pitched voice complaining. They lingered on the porch for another 5 minutes before I heard the heavy doors of their car slam shut, followed by the roar of the engine speeding away. I walked into my living room, sat on my comfortable sofa, and let out a long breath. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. I didn't feel the urge to call my friends and complain or cry over old family photo albums. I just felt done. The next few weeks were a masterclass in boundary setting. Derek tried every tactic in the book. First came the guilt trips. He sent photos of the boys looking sad, claiming they couldn't go to their hockey tournament because of me. I replied, "So sorry to hear that. Maybe next season." Then came the anger. He left a voicemail calling me selfish and toxic, claiming he would never let me see the boys again. I didn't respond to that one at all. I simply saved the audio file and went to my garden club meeting. By mid-January, reality crashed down on them. The bank didn't care about Sarah's executive parents in Boston, and Sarah's parents certainly weren't going to bail them out. They liked the illusion of wealth, not the burden of supporting it. I learned from a mutual family friend that Derek had quietly listed his luxury truck for sale. Sarah had applied for a part-time job at a local boutique. The free ride had violently come to an end, and gravity was finally doing its job. In late February, my doorbell rang. It was a Saturday afternoon, unseasonably warm. I opened the door to find Derek standing alone. He looked exhausted. He had lost the arrogant smirk that usually lived on his face. In his hands, he held a small, cheap bouquet of grocery store daisies. "Hi, Mom," he mumbled, looking at the porch floorboards. "Hello, Derek. Can I come in?" I stepped aside, letting him walk into the living room. He sat heavily on the armchair, clutching the flowers. He held them out to me, and I took them, setting them on the coffee table, without fetching a vase. "I'm sorry." He finally forced the words out. "About Christmas. About what I said." It was out of line. I sat opposite him, keeping my posture straight. It was out of line, but it was also honest, wasn't it? It showed exactly how you and Sarah view me. "She's working now," he said, ignoring my question. "At the boutique downtown. And I sold the truck. We're really struggling, Mom. The boys miss you. We all do." I observed him carefully. He wasn't apologizing because he missed my company. He was apologizing because his bank account was suffocating him. He wanted the ATM to turn back on. "I'm glad to hear you're both taking responsibility for your finances," I said warmly. "It builds character." His face fell. The realization hit him that the apology hadn't unlocked the vault. "Mom, the mortgage, just for this month. We're short." I shook my head slowly. "No, Derek. That arrangement is permanently over. I love you, but I will not subsidize your life anymore." He stared at me, searching for the weak, compliant mother he used to know. But she was gone. He stood up, his jaw tight, but he didn't yell. He just nodded in defeat and walked out the door. 6 months passed. Summer arrived, bringing long, warm days and blooming flowers in my garden. My life had shifted entirely. Without the constant drain on my finances, I had hired a landscaper to help with the heavy yard work. I booked a 2-week cruise to Alaska with a friend from my book club. I slept deeply, unbothered by midnight panic texts about bounced checks or unpaid bills. My relationship with Derek and Sarah didn't magically heal. There was no tearful reunion around a Sunday roast. Real life doesn't work like a movie. Instead, we found a cold, distant equilibrium. They realized I could not be bullied, manipulated, or guilted. When they finally accepted that the money was gone forever, their behavior changed. Sarah stopped ignoring me, treating me with a cautious, stiff politeness. Derek stopped making demands. I still saw my grandsons. Once a month, I would drive to a local park and Derek would drop them off for 2 hours. I brought them sandwiches and ice cream. I listened to their stories, pushed them on the swings, and loved them purely as a grandmother. I didn't pay for their sports. I didn't fund their wardrobes. I just gave them my time. One afternoon, sitting on a park bench watching the boys chase a soccer ball, I thought back to that Christmas Eve. No place for losers. I smiled, tilting my face up to the warm sun. Derek had been absolutely wrong about me, but his insult had been the greatest gift he ever gave me. It was the key that unlocked my cage. I wasn't a loser. I was a woman who had finally learned her own worth and learned to keep her wallet firmly shut.